Welcome back to another episode of Lead Every Day with Martin Lecomte and myself, Ben Mooney, aka the Leadership Guys. So, Martin, what's in store for today's chat?
Well, we thought that lots of people at this time of year will be talking about goals and annual goals, but we wanted to take things in a slightly different direction and talk about something that's in the same sort of ballpark, but very different, and that's career conversations.
Yeah, a topic it's fair to say is close to both of our hearts, right? Yeah. I guess it's worth considering first of all what a career conversation is, and just as importantly, what it isn't. Because I've made the mistake of using the word career conversation and a performance review quite interchangeably. So I think it'd be good to demystify that a little bit to start with. So what it is, be good to get your view on this, but from my perspective, it feels very different. First of all, it's a conversation that feels more high level. It's more long term. It isn't about the world of work. It's about the person. It can include the world of work, of course, but it's about the individual. So from my perspective, when I think of performance conversations or goal conversations, which many people may be having this time of year, they might sound like, so Martin, what are you working on in quarter one? Or how did your objectives end in 25? What are we doing in 26, Martin? And there is absolutely a time and a place for those. We are no way saying that they don't have a time and place. But the career conversation is more about Martin. So it should feel more, what do you want to do when you grow up? You know, what do you want to be? What do you want to be known for? What do you love doing? And what small part can maybe I play as a leader? Or what part can other people play in helping you accomplish that? How about you? What does it sound like for you?
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. I guess and if you've worked with Ben and I, you'll have heard this phrase loads of times. One of the things we talk about is starting with the end in mind. And from my perspective, that's exactly what a career conversation is about. So it's almost like on that day that you sign off for the last time, what's that thing that you want to have achieved that makes you go, yeah, I'm really proud of that. So it's almost like the career conversation is talking about where do you want to end your career? What are the sorts of things that you want to be doing, not what you're doing for the next 12 months. And it's a very, like you said, Ben, it's a very different conversation, but it's much more about the person than about the process. And we talked, in our first podcast about wearing our leadership hat. Having a career conversation is absolutely a leadership hat activity.
Great shout. Yeah, this isn't just part of an objective. I need to have a career conversation with each of my team this year. Far from it, right?
And that's a great shout. And potentially, a career conversation might not be for everybody. It's almost got to be, I'm just thinking about a career conversation that somebody had with me a couple of years ago, and they just don't know what they want to do. And it's almost like an ongoing conversation we are having because they're not sure what that goal is yet, that end goal. So it's not as finite as some of the other career conversations that I've had before. And to be fair, I'm actually still learning how to do them. So we're going to share some of the things that we do when we have them. But as we always say, that doesn't necessarily make us right.
It's funny when you say about that person. I'm sure some other people might be thinking of a person or some people they've worked with previously who, I'm okay, Jack. I just want to do what I do. I want to do it really well, but I don't need all of this stuff. I just want to do what I do, get paid, go home. I mean, what do you say to that type of person, but how does career conversations apply to those type of characters?
That's a great question. I guess in my head, I've got but everybody needs a career conversation, but then I've got a golden rule of leadership in my head. Stop it, it's not about me. And treat people as they need to be treated. As you know me, I'm always going to throw in some golden rules of leadership. Mm-hmm. But I guess it's if it's about the person, it's got to be right for them. And some people, and we've both known people like that through our careers, that come in, do a job, and it's a very finite thing. So they work to live completely. It is just the means of getting, they actually don't care that much about what they do, or it's not that important to them. Absolutely fine. So this is not about saying everybody needs a career conversation, but it's about, again, with our leadership hat on, going, oh, can I spot those people that really would value one and get loads of benefit from it? And it's something that, as I said, we're both still experimenting with, but, the ones that you have that really make a difference to people, they make a massive difference. And again, it's just another tool or a skill to have to put in your leadership toolkit to use as and when required.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you talk about those people who might not feel that they need this or that it's relevant for them, but you said actually when you, I can't remember the phrase you used just then, but it really struck a chord, because I was thinking about people who might be resistant to them, actively resistant, saying, this isn't for me, Martin, I'm fine. But then there's other people who maybe don't feel or don't understand, maybe don't think that they need this. But then when you start having the types of conversations and asking some of the questions that we help our clients with, it quickly becomes apparent, oh, this is actually quite useful. So I wonder if there's something there about, they don't need to be badged as a career conversation. You can just speak with people about these kind of topics.
That's exactly what was going through my head when you were saying, we'll call it a career conversation, but it might be 10 different conversations you have with somebody over 3 months. And again, the thing that's just popped into my head is, just because it's not right for them now, it doesn't mean it's not right for them at some point. So just because it's not right for them now doesn't mean their situation doesn't change in 6, 12, 9 months, 3 years. And actually that is the right time to have a career conversation with somebody. Again, it's just about having that skill in your toolkit to use as and when required by that individual. And that will stop, and we'll talk about this in a future pod, I'm sure, that will stop a load of people being quit and stayed. So they just come in, they hate what they do, they don't feel valued and appreciated, but they do, and they come in and they do enough. And there's loads of those people out there. And that's a Blanchard phrase, quit and stayed, or quiet quitters. But there's so much more you could help them with to get potential out of them, and that will make a difference to themselves, make a difference to the team, and make a difference to the overall result. Right. Just because it's not right for them now doesn't mean it's not right for them ever. And that's a bit of know your people, know your people, know your people.
It's all right. Another golden rule.
3 golden rules.
You have.
Already.
I've been counting the bingo. Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna do another golden rule throw in here, another plug. Your role as a leader is to develop people to a point where you're no longer required. This feels like it's all about golden rule number 10 for me.
Yeah.
There was an example where I had a member of a team who I felt might have been not a quitting stage, not a quiet quitter, but they're okay, Jack. They're a steady Eddie. They're just doing their work, and they're very good at it, but they don't want to do much more. And I'd made the mistake of thinking that, and I almost fell into the trap of not giving that person the time or asking some of these questions that we might dip into here. And I risked not giving them that time asking them the questions because I thought they were a steady Eddie and they wouldn't benefit from it. But it was really surprising for me that was one of the people I'm really proud of who would probably say, actually, that was really beneficial. I didn't do it well, but they felt it was really beneficial.
Kind of them not doing it at all, right?
Absolutely. Maybe we chat about a career conversation that I've benefited from personally. I said it's close to my heart, this topic, as it is to yours. But I've really felt the impact of a career conversation previously. And we don't often, if you've watched a couple of podcasts so far, we don't often talk about something that we did that worked well. We tend to demonstrate more of the humility stories. Try to. But I think it's really time to reference a time when I felt this worked really well, when we had a career conversation. And it was I can't believe what we're going back to now. 4 or 5 years ago. It's gone quickly, but I still look back at that as being the touch paper, some of the spark that lit the path or lit the fire. Confusing analogies here, I get it, but it really kind of paved the way to where I'm now. I don't think I would have left what was quite a comfortable role in large corporate finance if it hadn't have been for that chat. And maybe it won't go into the detail of that because it was a 4-hour conversation.
It ended up being 4 hours for sure. But to be fair, there were, and we'll touch on this later, there were a couple Aperol spritzes in there as well. And there was lunch.
There was lunch, a blooming brilliant tapas. Yeah, I would definitely recommend Barafina all day long. Cold Drops Yard, I remember it well. But the things, maybe just touching on the things that made that feel different from a performance conversation for a second, or from a goals conversation for a moment. Just thinking about previous conversations I've had on goals and objectives, they would have been very likely to be happening over Aperol spritzes or over tapas. So straight away there's a difference between in the style and the type of conversation that we're having here, right?
That's a really good point, though. Because I'm just going to share one of the biggest mistakes I ever made. I used to, and I think we might have talked about this before, and if we haven't, we'll definitely talk about it in a future pod. I used to do my one-to-ones outside of the office in coffee shops, and I used to take my team out to the coffee shop, and I loved it. And I'd buy the Starbucks or the Costa, other coffee brands are available, and we'd sit down and we'd have a chat. And one of my team never told me, but was really uncomfortable with that, and would prefer to be in the office. So again, it's just making sure that you get the environment right for the person, not for you. And that was we'll probably talk about it in a bit more depth another time, but that was a massive leadership lesson that I learned. I knew that when we had our conversation, that environment, your huge preference for extroversion, and big foodies, and that social way of doing it would change. And especially it was just after lockdown, it was one of the first times we'd met up face to face. If not the first time. Wow. So actually doing all of that differently and changing the context of it worked for you, but it doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So you need, from a leadership perspective, you really need to think about that person beforehand going, would they appreciate going out for lunch and talking about it? Would actually they feel more comfortable sitting in an office at work? Do you know what I mean? And again, big mistake that I made previously. You really need to think about that.
Yeah, I do. I see where you're coming from with it, and I'm just thinking though that I guess it is important to try and differentiate, if not formally, but more subtly, the difference between a type of career conversation, and we'll go into what this actually might look and sound like in a moment, right? But it's important to subtly differentiate between this and the goals conversation. So just my view on this, if you're used to having performance or goals conversations over Zoom or over Teams with the team, then it might be quite easy for a career conversation to kind of fall into that.
Ask them. Way just ask them.
Yeah.
Just ask them. What would work best for you? What would you like? Would you like to go out for coffee? Have a chat? What's easier? Do you fancy a beer? Or would actually be more comfortable for you and easier to find a room in the building? But I would encourage people to do it face to face because it's just more personal. Yeah. And we're seeing that with loads of our clients at the moment. When we offer to go and see them for a meeting, they're shocked quite often, but also really happy because they're not. We're tending to be so much more digital at the moment, and there's brilliant stuff with that. But I think we talked about this before. We are human beings and not human doings. Mm-hmm. We are human beings, not human doings, and that makes a massive difference to that relationship. And I would say our career conversation, we wouldn't be sitting here had we not had that chat.
No, absolutely not. I feel, and again, this is a personal preference. I feel that when I'm doing something or in a different environment, like sharing some food or even going out walking somewhere and talking, it just helps unlock a bit of thinking. It helps drop a barrier or a guard. It helps me be more open when I'm doing something like that.
Yeah.
So that's my preference, which I find helpful.
I guess maybe it's worth talking about why they matter and how they came about. Because again, I've got some I've done a bit of research, and we've probably all heard it already. You know, the different generations. So you know, I've just finished working. We both just finished working in the corporate world, and I've done a few corporate roles in my time, and it's amazing how many people have long service. So, you know, there's people leaving, having worked for the organisation for 35, 40. I think the most I've had recently is 41 years. But if you speak to, and that's Generation X or baby boomers, if there's still some of those working, but when you talk to people who are Generation Y, Generation Z, gamer generation, and I can't even remember what the next generation is, no one expects to be working in one organisation throughout their career. So you can't, from a leadership perspective, go, right, so they joined whatever company it is and they'll be here. So how do I, as a leader, motivate, develop and inspire that person, give them everything they need, knowing that they're not going to be there forever? Now, that might sound a little bit counterintuitive because, like, well, they're not going to be here forever. But that person, if they go and do something else, becomes a walking, talking advert for you, the organisation, and they perform at a higher level while they're there. That's, you know, developing people to a point where they're no longer required. Great, but you know, Blanchard talks about this brilliantly. Servant leadership. How do I serve my people to help them perform? And I would go, a career conversation is one of those things that would make a massive difference. And I've never had one. I've never been the recipient of one. I kind of did one for myself, and I got to a stage where I was like, oh, something's really different. I need to do this for myself. And I watched something, and it gave me some ideas, and I kind of had that conversation for myself. But what I have had over my career is 2 or 3 leaders who I knew cared about me as a person. And those people I would walk over broken glass for and give all that discretionary effort. So just imagine creating that for the people that you lead. And I hope there's a couple of people in my career, not everybody, that will have gone, yeah, Martin did that for me. That's almost like, you know, we talked about when we did our Q&A, what do I want our legacy to be? I want to have made a difference. And that's where that career conversation stuff comes in.
But the thing you said about, newer generations view careers as more of a series of roles that are in quick succession, 2 years and you move on, 3 years, if that, right? But if you're a person like myself, 2 decades in a same organisation, that can feel a bit unusual to have that kind of. You said it before; it might feel a bit counterintuitive, but it might be. Well, who am I to have that conversation? My experience is staying fairly static in a job that I love, that I'm proud of, that I want to retire from. Great. So how on earth do I have a conversation with someone who is hell-bent or who believes that careers should be moving from position to position, company to company?
3 underpinning principles. Middle one, flexibility. So how do I adapt and it's hard, but how do I adapt my style to treat people as they need to be treated? That's the whole principle of it. So, you talked about somebody having that conversation with somebody that was like, I do this, this is my job, I love it. That's absolutely fine, but you've given them the opportunity, and you might come back and revisit it if things change for them, but it's just focused on the person and not the process. And it's, again, conscious of, we've talked a little bit about the power of them and everything like that. Maybe we could share a little bit of, right, so what does that look like in practice? And maybe, if you want we probably won't go into specific questions today, things you can ask them, because that'll be down to you. But maybe we can share with you a bit of an outline of what a career conversation with that structure might look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can, like you say, go into more depth if people want that, absolutely. So yeah, the first thing we're talking about what it looks like, overarchingly, they're uninhibited by the current state, by the current thinking, and that might be something that rub happens, that might be something that's quite new or unusual or feels different. So that the end point isn't going to be an action or an objective or a task or a doing thing. The end point might just be an idea or having had a conversation, and that's fine, right? That's what I feel makes these very different.
I tell you what's really funny, it got me thinking about it the other day. So 15 years ago, if you'd had this conversation, nobody knew what a YouTube influencer was. It didn't exist. Yeah? It didn't exist. So bear in mind, the thing that person wants to do might not even exist yet. That's okay. That's absolutely okay. But it's just getting that, I was talking to somebody the other day, and it wasn't a proper career conversation, but they were talking to me about something that they really wanted to do, and they were talking about it, and one of the things they said was, and no one's doing that? Brilliant. That's absolutely fine. Now you need to do that. Right, so will people want it? And that's, what do I need to do to get people interested in it? You know, the thing that I'm doing now with MLC Speaks and with you as the leadership guys, I'm kind of going, if you'd asked me 10, 15 years ago, it would still be this. I just hadn't had no one had asked me the questions, or I hadn't questioned myself. So I was just, increasing my career. But I'm like going, oh, not in a horrible way. Could I have got to this point quicker? Yes. And actually, having been asked those questions, I'm like, this is what I should be doing.
So those questions are massively important, right?
Yeah.
But I guess one of the things to really consider here is that as the person asking the questions, you don't need to have the answers to them. In fact,
100%.
It's probably easier if you don't have the answers to them,
100%.
right? It's an absolute demonstration in being coach-like.
Yeah, that's a great shout. And it's creativity. In an ideal world, forget about, and it's almost important to forget about things like, your current career. Just like you said, Ben, in an ideal world, you look back on your career, last day of work, what would you see yourself doing? What would you see yourself doing? If I talk to my daughter Ray at the moment, and I struggle with this because she's my daughter, and I ask her what she wants to be doing, she tells me all these wonderful things, and in my head I'm already qualifying it, going, but that role doesn't exist, that role doesn't exist. So actually, I'm not the best person to have a career conversation with my daughter, because I've got too much almost invested in it. I'm finding it too difficult to separate fatherhood from great coach-like questions.
That's interesting. So can you be too close to a recipient of it? Right, yeah, okay, I get that.
In my humble opinion. Yeah. So that's a great, it's almost like paint a picture of what your ideal role would look like. Don't be constrained by organisation, it's almost like thinking, how many days, what would you like to be doing? How many days would you be spending working? What would you be spending your time on? All stuff like that, to almost create a picture. And you can tell when someone's getting really into it, because they start to get excited, they start to build, there's this. And it's almost like people say, I've never thought about it like that before. And suddenly it comes to them, or they start to build it, or they might even go, I need to think about that, let me come back to you.
Which is fine. Yeah, absolutely. But look at this. Look at the timescales that you're talking about there. You're not talking about what do you want to be doing next year, what do you want to be doing in 3 years' time. And that for me was one of the really unusual and actually quite difficult things when we were in Cold Drop Yard over that over the Aperol spritzes. It was thinking longer term than what I have ever really given myself the license to think before. We were thinking about what do you want to be doing when you retire? What do you want to look back at your career or your job and think, I'm proud of what I did there? What do you want to be telling your friends, your family, your kids, your grandkids about what you did as a career and what you feel really proud of? And it's not going and solving world hunger or maybe not curing cancer. It might be that, but it can just be something that you're genuinely passionate about.
It just popped into my head. What's the last chapter of your own book saying? What's written in the last chapter of your book? Before the epilogue, what's the last chapter in your book saying? And that's kind of the way that I think about it. And I genuinely believe that I'm now doing what's in the last chapter of my book. I can't see myself doing anything else. but I would have said the same thing 10, 15 years ago, because that hasn't really changed. But I didn't realise that was an option. And it's that curiosity thing that you said, is like, just getting curious, draw me a picture. And it's like, how much time? How much, you can ask people, what do you want to be earning?
Yes.
What's important? What? And it's almost like you said in coaching, in
uninhibited.
Yeah, and one of your favourite coaching questions is, and what else?
And what else? Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's just using the one, what else? Michael Bungie-Stanier strategy, and what else? And what else? Just getting them to draw that amazing picture. And that can be quite challenging for people, but it can be really enlightening for people. And you can see it on people's faces. So, like we always say, start with the end in mind.
End in mind, stage one. I love that. And all we talked about there, it just reminds me of, you're almost challenging the person you're speaking with to be childlike again.
Yeah.
If you ask a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? They're not limited by anything. They're not limited by the current job or the salary or what. They've not got the commitments. It's trying to channel that.
It reminds me, you might see in the back the Cheshire Cat, and it's something that we use there when we talk to people about career conversations, and we've called it the Cheshire Cat syndrome. And if you know Alice in Wonderland, she's trying to make her way out of Wonderland, and she's walking down a pathway where she meets a fork in the road, and the Cheshire Cat is sitting in the tree. And she's asked the Cheshire Cat, which way should I go? And the Cheshire Cat goes, so where are you going? And she goes, I don't know. And then the Cheshire Cat says, well, it doesn't matter what path you take. And it's almost like going, how often do we bounce from, and I know this from bitter personal experience, and you get lucky, but you bounce from one thing to another. 35 years ago, if I'd said to my friends, I work in financial services, they would have laughed out loud. But I spent 20 years in financial services in 3 different roles because I kind of found a home. But it wasn't until when I was 50 that I had this conversation with myself, and I was like, all right, that's it. I know exactly what I want to do.
And I wonder how many of those moves over that time had been moves away from something rather than moves towards.
I think it's 2 and 2.
Something, yeah.
2 and 2.
Wow.
2 and 2. So yeah, start with the end in mind. And then we also call it a sat-nav analogy. So the next thing, Ben?
The next thing the sat-nav does is figure out where you are. What's your starting point? And I suppose in the context of a career conversation, what does that situation really look like for the recipient, for you? And that might include things like, what are you really good at right now? What actually are your blind spots? And when this is a tough one, and how do you know?
Yeah.
What's informing that opinion of your current state? Because often I've been in a situation before I've thought my current state was very different from it actually was. That's because I was telling myself, I'm not as good as that. Or I'm great at this, and I really wasn't. So it's really important to get the data behind what that current state is, right?
Yeah. There's a massive link there to emotional intelligence and self-management and self-awareness. How do you get that data and where do you get it from? But it's almost like going, if I don't know where my starting point is, I'm probably going to go the wrong way. So it's a really good shout. And again, they're probably more common questions to ask. So what are your strengths? How do you know? What are you working on? But it's also, but how does that relate to where you want to go? So how do those strengths relate to your ideal end state? Nice.
Love that, yeah. So if you want to be a master beekeeper, then going into organisations and talking about what is it you're doing right now? How's your network informing that? What do I think it is?
Love that.
Yeah, okay, great stuff. Thanks, Ryan. So you've got the end state, the end in mind, the B in your sat nav. You've got the starting point, the A in your sat nav. The next logical thing to happen is you map that route, right? You map that journey.
That's what your sat nav does. Mm-hmm. And I guess then from a leadership perspective, that's when you might do that together and you might offer some advice. And that's not just about, when we come from a learning background, that's not just about going on courses, because that's about, so what opportunities are there? What experiences are there secondments? Are there things outside of their working life that they want to get involved with that will really help? Your beekeeping is a classic example. What is it that really drives you to do all that stuff differently? And how then, this is the big leadership thing, how then as a leader can I support you and help you to do that? That might be finding a mentor from outside of the organisation, but using your leadership network. That might be thinking about opportunities to take the lead in something or go and work with another department. And that might totally, reroute your career to help you be where you want to be.
I think it's really important about it isn't always a training course is the answer. Because guilty as charged, I've been in that situation and thought, if I do this course next, then that's career progression. And it just isn't. In fact, I benefited from you remember this, when we worked together in corporate finance, I benefited from, you used the word a second ago, secondment. No, well, S then. Yes. Fine. Yeah, secondment. I benefited from that. I spent 6 months, albeit, was it maybe 2 or 3 days a week, in a different team to explore, actually, what part can I play there? And it turns out it wasn't a dead end. It didn't lead to me securing a job full-time in that place that I was seconded to. That was kind of not the point of it anyway.
And that's the thing with a sat-nav, right? So sometimes you'll go, I'm going to go this way, and then you'll get rerouted. Exactly. And that's okay, but you need to experience those things and find out how that worked for you. The last thing that I'd say about the route, and this is the bit that I think I struggle with sometimes. Remember, you are a conduit, but it's that person's career conversation. So the responsibility and accountability lies with them. Yeah. You are just a resource to help them. If they don't do anything about it, and I've had a couple of career conversations with people where they haven't, that's not your responsibility. It's consciously or subconsciously, they're probably telling you it's not that important at the moment, it's not the right time. That's absolutely fine, but you've sowed the seed. But they have to have responsibility for their career. That's not your job.
Great point. Yeah, I've been guilty of not doing that either in the past and following up. Have you done that thing yet? Have you done that thing yet? Yeah. Okay.
And then it's just not being horrible. Management hat on. It's a task. It's a task and a process. Yeah, absolutely. Right. And it doesn't, and again, just as we start to wrap it up, it doesn't always work perfectly. So it's not a, if you do this, it's going to be perfect. If you do that, we're still learning about, I've been having career conversations with people for 5 years. I think I had a career conversation with somebody once without knowing it was a career conversation and not doing it as a structured. And this sounds a bit braggadocious, so apologies. That person who's still a very close personal friend of mine said it changed their career. Wow. I didn't realise how much it changed their career. And I'm like going, I think I got lucky, but it's because I was interested in the person and not the process.
And I was going to ask, actually, if you had one top tip to give someone who may be trying a career conversation for the first time, what might that be? I'll let you think about that for a sec, because we're going to ask. We have a series of questions and some more structure. So if you're sat there thinking, okay, I get the theory and the concept of career conversations, but I'd like to more steer, well, get in touch and we can absolutely help with that. But what's the top?
Be curious.
Be curious.
Be curious. Make it about the person. Listen. Get curious and just get curious and listen and be fascinated by what they had to tell you. And then, if you've got your leadership hat on, a lot of the other stuff will come quite naturally. It's good. Honestly, as a leader, having done quite a few of them, I think it's one of the most leadership hat things I've ever done. And it's, for those people it's really worked for, it's been incredibly powerful. And of course, it might feel a little bit uncomfortable for you and for them to begin with. And that's okay, and call it out. But just try something different. And you know what? It's just another tool to put in your toolkit.
Absolutely. good chat. If you want to get in touch with us, again, we'd love to hear your views, your comments, and particularly your suggestions of what are the topics that you'd find most helpful for us to talk about in the future. So please do get in touch. You can do so via LinkedIn, Martin Lecomte, Ben Mooney. You can also use Instagram. The Leadership Guys are a tag. You can find us there. I guess you could just drop us an email if you know those email addresses too. But that's all from us. Thank you very much for listening in. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.